Hello and welcome to my new series for airbrushing. In the past I've highlighted some videos about beginning airbrush. Mainly those videos cover subject about how to get started, which airbrush to buy, and mainly gloss over some stuff. In this series we'll assume you finally got your airbrush set and you're ready to go. So I'll be going over some information and techniques in further detail. First, let's get a couple of things out of the way before we start. I do mainly use Badger products, but I can and will try to answer questions about other major brands out there, whether it be Iwata, Greg's, Harder Steinbeck, Pache, whatever. It really doesn't matter as long as you're trying to improve or learn with your airbrush. Second, this video is being made for both my wargaming and scale modeling channel, but most information in these videos can be used for other hobbies and industries as well. You'd be surprised about how many questions I get from people starting out in the t-shirt business or in other arts and craft venues. I'm mainly making this point to say don't be afraid to ask me any questions. I'm here to help you to get started in any which way I can. If you have questions that require a detailed answer, the best way is to shoot me a mail through YouTube instead of commenting on the video. It's just easier to talk in mail rather than it is in video comments. So in this video we'll talk about getting started, and it is here at the point of people's journeys with an airbrush that I get a lot of questions. So let's get the ball rolling. Alright, so the first basic things that you'll need for airbrushing is obviously your airbrush and your air compressor or air source. So let's go ahead and go over these couple of things first. Here what you're seeing is the Badger Chrome. The Badger Chrome is a dual action gravity airbrush. Put the paint in here, push down, blows the air out, pull back, and the paint gets released from the cup and out into the nozzle. Now the more you pull back, the more paint's going to come out, the wider your spray will be. And that's basically it for a dual action airbrush. We'll get more into it later on in other videos, but pretty much that's all you really need to know right now about the airbrush in this video. Okay, some other things that you might want to know about if you're in the market to shop for this, and I want to cover this really quick, is that if you're asking me for a suggestion, which a lot of people do, is that I would suggest in our hobby to get the Badger Chrome or the Patriot 105. The Patriot 105 is cheaper, but it has a bigger nozzle size on it, and you could probably go down to, I think, 2.21 nozzle size, needle size, if you got the conversion kit. Okay, but honestly the Chrome is a very beautiful airbrush and it works very, very well. Now, the other thing, that if you're trying to buy an airbrush and you're asking people for, suggestions, I usually don't try to stick to suggesting, the Badger products, because honestly I want you to get the best airbrush that you can that works well for you. The feel and everything is different through the product lines here. So I wish that there's a store where you could, grab and hold an airbrush and see how it feels in your hands, but unfortunately you can't. There's none that I know or that are around that does that for you. So you could only really go on my recommendations, and what I would suggest you do is score around YouTube and see what other people are using, and what they have in mind, or what advice they give you about the airbrush they're using that's a different brand, like Harder Steinbeck or Iwata or what have you. A very good video is Les's airbrush rant. Okay, there really is no better airbrushes or which one is better. It's really what fits for you. All these major brands make great airbrushes, okay? So if you want to check out his airbrush rant, the link's down below in the video description. If you want to know more detail about the airbrushes or the main airbrushes that we use in our hobby here for Badger product, Ichiban Painting made a really good airbrush review for the airbrushes that I use here too as well. So again, link below in the video description. Now let's talk about your air source. Here I'm using an air compressor, so let's just go over that really quick. This is the Aspire Pro from Badger. Okay, now if you're looking for a compressor, all I can suggest really is just get a cheap compressor that you get at TCP Global. It's like the TC90 or the TC90T, depending if you want one with the tank or not, and it's pretty inexpensive. It's about like 75, 80 bucks. And honestly, all the companies, major manufacturer of airbrushing that has compressors, really just buy them or hire them, outsource them to overseas to get them done, and it really is the same thing. So when it comes to compressors, really try not to spend too much on it. Honestly, that's my advice I want to give. So this Aspire Pro has in a case in here, 2 airbrush holders, it has a tank, 1 gallon tank for air below, and the compressor is on top. Okay, out of the tank here is the regulator as well as the moisture trap. Okay, now this is the basic setup, usually without the casing or the tank. It's the basic setup for a compressor. If you get one with the tank, it'll be right on top of the tank. Okay, so a couple of things. Let's go ahead and take a look really quick about this here. The compressor here regulates your PSIs that's coming out of your tank or your compressor. PSI means pound per inch of air. Okay, the higher it is, the more air that's going to come out. If you have too much air, you'd just be sandblasting your models. Okay, so here is the gauge here. As you can see, it'll tell you what your PSIs are. Right now it's set to 30 PSIs. Okay, and then you would adjust it by turning it clockwise to give out more PSIs, or turning it counterclockwise to lower the PSIs. And we will go into later detail about PSIs. Just know that this is where you control the PSIs, and that's how you control how much air is coming out of your compressor, and it does affect how you're going to airbrush your models and stuff like that. The other thing to notice is that there's a moisture trap on this regulator here. The moisture trap is here. It captures any moisture, drips into this valve here, and you just twist this little knob down here to release all the moisture that might have built up. Okay, one important thing to know if you have a compressor with a tank is that during your usage, after you're ready to use it, or after you're done using it, you need to drain the tank. Okay, usually it is on the side, on the bottom, either to the right or left of the compressor here, but in this one, since it's cased up, the release valve is here. Now when you're spraying, moisture will build up in your tank, and it's very important that you drain it after, like, you know, every usage, where you're going to let it sit down for a period of time. In other words, when you're done with your session, to drain the tank. If you don't, after a few months, your tank is just a rusted tank, and you're just going to have to get it replaced or get a new compressor, or, you know, dismount the compressor off the tank and not use the tank. But yeah, that's about it. If you want to know more about whether or not you should buy one with the tank or not, check out my latest or my previous videos about using, you know, tanks and compressors. Okay, so let's talk a little about paints, and this is a little touchy subject for a lot of people, but honestly, if you pretty much shoot anything through an airbrush that's paint wise, we usually use acrylic paint in our hobby, but I've used enamel paints, and I've used lacquer paints too as well. Either way, if you thin it white, it should go through an airbrush just fine. You just have to get the right viscosity of it to make it shoot through the airbrush. So let's go and go through some stuff. Tamiya colors are great. I started with this a long time ago, and I still use it once in a while. It's great for brush painting and shooting through an airbrush. I usually thin this stuff with the Tamiya lacquer painters. Tamiya lacquer thinners. Okay, to shoot through an airbrush. Okay, now let's go over to the Vallejo line. Obviously, Vallejo Model Air is made to shoot out of the brush. Okay, and you could just drop it straight into your brush, no problems. The thicker Model Color line is actually much thicker. You do have to thin it, and I would suggest using the Vallejo thinners to do it. Nothing else. You can use water, but the Vallejo thinner will thin it much better. And we're talking about like a 20-to-1 ratio here. We're talking about 1 drop of paint to 20 thinner. Okay, the Game Color line takes a little less, about 15 drops to 1 drop of paint, 15 thinner to 1 drop of paint. Reaper as well, I believe it's a little different with Reaper. You have to play around with it. In other words, it's the role of viscosity, not how many drops in ratio. These drops in ratio is just something to get you started, but I find that sometimes I have to add more thinner or less thinner depending on the color and the line of paint. So the Reaper you could dilute with regular water or distilled water, and I believe about 10 drops would about do it. Some are less. It depends on, again, it depends on the color. And of course, the new Minotaur line by Badger is awesome paints. I use this mainly now as my main workhorse paints, and they shoot through the airbrush straight through. No need to thin it, and they work well with the brush too. Now here's the thing, these work well with the brush if you are a person that likes to thin down your paints, okay, and which is usually a lot of, you know, contrary to the arguments that is how you should paint your figures, is to thin down the paint and do it in layers, okay, to get a really nice coverage and a really nice light coverage, so it doesn't look like your models are gooped up or anything like that. Suggestions on paints really to shoot through to make your life easier is to get the Minotaur or the Vallejo Airs, okay, because they just drop right into your brush and you're ready to go. Thinning is kind of an art, I believe, for airbrushing. So until you're ready to really tackle that, because you're going to get a lot of frustrations, as I have, because when I switched from Tamiya to Vallejo paints, I switched to the model colors, and man, did I have a hard time trying to get the thinning right. But I finally got it down and really had no problems with it. And then switched mostly to Model Air, even though the colors aren't as bright. But I don't like doing really bright minis. These worked out fine. Then I got involved with the Badger Minotaur project, and I don't think I would, go back, because these are really good paints. And I'm not just saying that because, I worked on the project or that I'm sponsored by them. So here we go. Now I'm going to get a question about what about GW paints? Every time someone asks me that, I reply with a moan, okay? Not because that they're bad paints. I don't use GW, I haven't in years, okay? But I had success of thinning down the old paint line. I don't know about the new paint line, okay? The old paint line had no problems, just thinning it with regular water and shooting through an airbrush. The problem with that is that their pigments are so thick, okay, that you'll get a lot of clogging in your airbrush, and that's why I don't really suggest it. You're just going to get a lot of heartache. Okay, the GW paints are made for brushes the way that GW makes them, so I really can't argue that. But again, the ones I suggest is Model Air and Minotaur. And then when you want to get into thinning, which we'll cover in another video in detail, then go with the other paints. Now also, you're gonna run into this argument. A lot of people are gonna be like, oh, which one is the best paints, or this paint's better than that one and that one, because they use that, and that's fine. If that's their opinion, that's their opinion. I'm telling you right now, all right, hobbyists argue about which one is the better paint. All right, hobbyists tries to argue about, oh, this covers much better than this paint and this paint or that paint, and then they make up stupid terminology like oh, this paint separates more than the other. Okay, all acrylic paint separate. Okay, that's just the way they're made, okay? And second, there's no better paint, man. Just whatever paint you use that you think you could make work. So here's my idiom. Hobbyists argue about which one's the better paints. Real artists make the paint work for them. So that's about all I'm going to cover in paints. If you want a really good review about the Minotaur paints, again, Ichiban Painting did a really nice video about how these shoot out at Airbrush and other stuff that you might want to know about the Minotaur. So again, link at the bottom of the video description. Okay, airbrush cleaners. You'll need airbrush cleaner to clean and do color changes and stuff like that, and keep your airbrush clean, obviously. Awada makes their own airbrush cleaner. This is Media Airbrush Cleaner by Awada here. Badger makes their own airbrush cleaner. And then you could also use Windex. Windex is a great cheap way to clean your airbrushes and do color changes with. All right, just don't thin your paints with this. So there you have it, airbrush cleaners. Really simple, direct. There is actually no better airbrush cleaner, I don't think anyways. I used the Vallejo one, which I don't have listed here. I used up the Vallejo stuff and I already threw away the bottle. Unfortunately, the Vallejo bottles are smaller, so the price on that is a little more expensive than, say, getting something from Awada or Badger, or just plainly use Windex. Get a huge bottle like this. We must have bottles around the house. I know Les has a bottle in his room. I have one in my room. I have a bottle down here where if teaching painting or having painting sessions. Windex is usually the way to do it, to clean your airbrushes and stuff like that, to do color changes. Other than that, these work well too, the airbrush cleaners. You need an airbrush holder, I'm telling you right now. If you're going to set down your airbrush in between paint changes, or if you have to do something with your models, or if you have to leave the desk for a few minutes, then an airbrush holder will help. Now you can get an airbrush holder that just sits on your desk like this, and this thing here can hold up to 4 airbrushes here, as you can see. The problem is that, as you can tell here, when I'm putting my chrome on here that's already connected to the compressor, that it's a little hard to just sit it straight down. All right, really, this is more just I think just to store your airbrushes that you grab really quick and then change it up. The other airbrush holder here you could get is something that could clip onto the side or the edge of your desk or whatever you're working on. Fortunately, I can't put this on this table here, as the lip's kind of long or big, so it won't fit. But what you do is you set it to the side of your the table here, and then just sit your airbrush right on top like that. And it's much better and easier to use something like this than something that sits on your table, unless you're using multiple airbrushes. Now you can get airbrush holders anywhere. You could get them on Amazon, you could go to TCP Global, go to eBay, but lots of places sell them, so it shouldn't be that hard to find. The various different airbrush holders. So Badger has their own as well. So there you go. So finally, let's just go over some really quick stuff that you need when you're airbrushing. You need paper towels. Okay, that's important to wipe, clean your airbrush and stuff like that. Very simple, no nonsense type of thing. You need something to mix paint within your cup. Sometimes you might have to mix the paints. You could use toothpicks, or you could use a brush. A brush works really well, and it does waste a little paint, but for me it really doesn't matter. I'd rather get the paint mixed right than than worry about wasting paint. And you can get something like the Tamiya paint mixer here. This thing is pretty cool. It has a flat end here, has a little spoon here that you could push, scoop up some paints and put in your airbrush cup. But yeah, and that's about it. Also, you need some kind of place to where you could unload the nasty, the messy stuff from your airbrush. So you could get a Tupperware container, put some paper towels into it, and just spray in there to to do color changes and stuff like that. You just get a big box. Okay, that's another way to do it. And just put trash in there and spray the stuff in there. That's sometimes what I usually do when I'm lazy. Okay, let's talk about some stuff that is not really needed but will help, and it's also makes your life easier when you're airbrushing. So let's go over this really quick. So here's a really cool thing. This is an airbrush cleaning station. If you do a search on it on Amazon or eBay, you get one for like, I believe 19 bucks, something like that. But it's really cool. The thing is that you can use this to clean your airbrush, spray stuff in. You just set it on here, push back the trigger, and just spray stuff in there. Do it for color changes or just to wash out your airbrush. It also doubles up as an airbrush holder as well. Here there's a filter that will filter out all the yucky stuff that might come back out from the jar, and you just empty the jar and clean it once in a while. And this is a really cool thing. I love this thing. This really helps you, especially in the long run. This way you don't have to carry around a Tupperware or a box to throw away your stuff. The second thing we'll take a look at is airbrush lube. This is Rag Dab by Badger. Okay, this is an airbrush lube that you can use that will help with dry tipping. Now, dry tipping happens because we're spraying out acrylic paint. It'll dry on the tip, and there's no way to really prevent that. But what you can do is prolong it from happening by using the lube here. This is Rag Dab lube. The Wada makes a brand as well, and you can pick up a bottle there on Amazon or something like that. But basically, if you want to know how to use it, check out my video on prolonging dry tip, and that is the link. That is a link in below the video description. Squeeze bottles. This stuff is awesome. Okay, this right now is holding alcohol. All right, and because it doesn't have a big lip or anything, it just squeezes out. You just squeeze it right into the cup. This is holding Windex. What I really suggest is these wash bottles here. These are great because all you have to do is take your airbrush and then just squeeze it over on top without any fuss, spill, or mess. It makes it really easy. Okay, gloves. Gloves help protect your hand. You get a huge box of these over at Uline or some other I guess grocery, like wholesale grocery stores and stuff. But you get a box of these that come in all different sizes. It helps to keep your hands from overspray and stuff like that. All you have to do is just slip it on and off you go. Now a lot of people say, oh, you should use gloves and stuff like that. Is it needed? I don't know. I sometimes don't use gloves and I get spray all over my hands. I just make sure that I don't eat my hands so that I don't get infected by the paint, and make sure I wash them after I'm done. So really that's no big deal. It helps though, I guess, to keep your hands clean, especially if you maybe have a reaction to the paint. You never know. I don't know, some people might. Next thing we'll look at is the Badger paint mixer. And then you go, well, why do you need a paint mixer? Unfortunately, this doesn't fit the dropper bottles like Vidal has or Reaper has. It does fit the Minotaur line. Now, why do you need a mixer? All you do is turn it on, put in your bottle, go up and down just a little and get it mixed. Well, in the factories, the way they mix paint before they put it in the bottle is it's mixed. All right, it's not shaken, it's not agitated with a a little BB or whatever. It's mixed. So that's the best way to keep the pigments mixed in with the medium that holds it together. Okay, so to simulate that, you get something like this, especially if you use Militaire, and then just do that once in a while on your paints, and it just puts it together and it stays there pretty nicely until you have to do it again. Eyedroppers, needed, must. Okay, you don't have to, but it makes things more accurate when you're doing drop to drop ratios and stuff like that from the paint bottle to your airbrush. It's a great way to do it. 2 drops of gray, 1 drop of black, and then 5 drops of thinner, just like that. Drop, drop, drop. Very cheap. You could get like 25 count for like 15 bucks. Maybe it might be cheaper. Maybe it was 9 bucks. I don't remember. But check out Amazon. Just look up eyedropper. Quick disconnects. Let's talk about quick disconnects. If you're using multiple brushes, I'm telling you, this is heaven sent. This little piece right here, all right, is a quick disconnect. This goes on to the bottom of your airbrush. And if you're going to ask, this is the Vega nail air. This is used for doing nails. I use it for miniature painting. But you just screw it on here. All right. Take that. Let's say you have another airbrush. This is my chrome. Let's disconnect that. Switch it to this airbrush, and I'm ready to go. As simple as that. It makes life easier if you're using multiple airbrushes. Is it required? No. But if you're using multiple airbrushes and you like to do a lot of switcheroos like I do, depending on what you're trying to do, then this is a big savior. Okay, let's talk a little something about needle sizes. A lot of people think that, oh, an airbrush that has a smaller needle size means that you'll get a lot more greater detail. In a way, yes. In a way, no. All right, the most important thing to think about when you're choosing a needle size on a brush is that what medium you're going to shoot through the brush. Okay, this one right now, my chrome has a 0.21 needle size, or a needle in the airbrush right now. I could switch it out to a 0.30, I believe, and there's a conversion kit where I could, I think, switch it down to a 1.5, I think. I'm not sure, but anyways, 0.21 right now is kind of like good use for the paints we use, like Militaire or Vallejo paints. It's actually a little smaller than what you really want to use for those type of paints, the type of paints we use. Okay, now at this level of the needle size, the best way to shoot stuff out is mediums like ink and stuff like that. You might have a problem if you don't know how to really thin paints. You're going to get clogging happening at a 0.21 needle size with like Model Air or Militaire, or if you don't thin your other paints right, it will clog. Okay, best way to start when you're practicing is go with something at a 0.30 needle, which is for the chrome. Comes with 2 needles, which is a very fine, which is what's in here now, 0.21, and a fine needle. A fine needle is 0.30, I believe. So start with a 3.0 first. Make sure you put that in your brush, practice with it until you're really used to thinning down the paints. Again, it's not really about the accuracy, about how small the size of the needle is. It's just about the medium that you're shooting through your airbrush. Yeah, it does affect it a little, but not to the point where you're going to give you headaches if you're trying to put a very small needle in here, or go up buy a very expensive airbrush that has a 0.001 needle, which I don't think they have, and then try to shoot, paint through in there and go, oh no, it's not working. No, why is it not working? Stuff. Okay, the smaller needle size, the thinner the medium has to be. Okay, otherwise you just want to run into major headaches. So on the Patriot itself, I believe it comes standard with a 0.30. Okay, if you get the chrome, switch it. The 2.1 will probably be in there. Switch it to 3.0 and then start with that first until you're really comfortable about thinning down your paints. Okay, otherwise it'll just clog up. It's not gonna break anything. It'll just clog up, give you a lot of headache. All right, talking about cup sizes on an airbrush. This is a chrome. I think this is a quarter cup size. Maybe that's what they call it. Well, anyways, it's pretty big. The cup size here. When I'm using this, I don't fill the paint up to the top, and don't ever do that. I'm telling you right now. You fill it all the way to the top, it's going to stand there for a while, and then you're going to have dry paint on the side of the cup and everything like that. Paint's going to get thicker. I barely put much paint into it. I mean, even maybe 1/8 of the cup, actually. And then I just spray, and then if I need more, I'll put more in the cup, okay? Better to do that way than try to fill it all the way up and then paint whatever you're painting, okay? That's one of the, I guess, quote-unquote, new mistakes that I see a lot of people do. You don't have to fill all the way up, and it's not suggested you do, especially in what we do here. If you really need to have a lot of paint, like maybe you're base coating, 1,000 orcs, okay? Then this is not good to use to do that, okay? That's just wasting. You want to get something maybe like the Anthem that has a bottom feed that you could attach a bottle to, and you just spray all you want, okay? The needle size is bigger, so you get a wider spray and you get better coverage, and you don't have to switch out that much, okay? For something that big, use something like a bottom feed, like this Anthem 155, okay? Again, the cup size really don't matter. You don't have to fill it all the way up. Like, for example, the Soltar here, half of the cup size, okay? Again, you don't really need to use that much paint, especially when you're doing details, which the Soltar is really made for. Okay, and then you have something like this. This is the Nail Air. Used to do nails. This doesn't even have a cup. All right, you just put a couple drops in there and then just go to town. Okay, so again, just because you have a bigger cup size, all right, don't mean that you have to fill everything up, and it's not suggested you do. Don't fill it all the way to the top. Just fill it like 1/8 of it, and then you're ready to go. And then do it where you have to just keep refilling it instead of just have everything sit in your cup. Trust me, it will start drying up, it'll start gunking up, and then you'll have little flakes that will try to get into your needle right here and then clog you up, and then you're gonna have to dump everything out and you have to clean your airbrush, okay? Do it drops at a time, 5 drops per spray or something. Really, it's an airbrush. You don't have to use that much paint. Now let's talk about ventilation for a little bit. Now, you want to spray in an area where there's a lot of room, or get a fan to blow some air around and circulate the room, okay? Usually, unless you're doing really like major base coating or something with an airbrush like this and fumes just get everywhere, you want to actually spray where it's pulling the air out of from wherever you're at, okay? Because that stuff, you don't want to get that stuff into your lungs or anything like that, because even though they're acrylics, there's still stuff inside the paint that can harm you. Okay, the other good thing is you could do is get a mask. Something this cheap will help. Luke, I am your father. Another expensive approach is to get a spray booth, which will cost you probably around $250 to $400, $500, depending on the spray booth you get. Autograph makes some pretty good spray booths, so maybe if you want to take a look at that. There's also another spray booth out in the market. I forgot which brand it was, but it's a portable one. It seems to work okay, so you might want to take a look at that as well. But the most important thing is just to go ahead and make sure wherever you're spraying that you get a lot of ventilation, okay? Most of the time when you're spraying really up close and tiny little bits on your model, you really don't even need that much ventilation, and you should be okay. But to be on the safe side, you could always get a mask, wear that. You could get, one of those paper masks that are cheap, or you could get a really like hardcore Creed corpse type of mask if you really want, but that kind of gets in the way when you're painting. So just remember, stay safe, try to get ventilated area where you're spray painting. So I hope this video is of help getting you going with your airbrush. If you got any small comments or suggestions, please post them down in the video comments below. This series will be added to a new video list called Airbrushing Intermediate, so you guys can check that out to view any videos that might have come before or after this one that you're watching now. So thanks for watching, guys. There's more to come, and I will talk at you guys later. See ya.